Oh shit. Are you serious?
Yay! Well, welcome, Grace, to Ironically
Thank you.
Serious. I am so thrilled because before we even start, I have to admit, you are like the reason that I started speaking online because you were my first ever. Fill Up Your Cup was my first ever, like, live more than 10 people situation. And I remember I was so nervous and I was like, okay, if this amazing woman trusts me to show up, like, I've got this.
You've got this. I'm like, first of all, I'm blown away that that was your first time because you are so eloquent. You are just like, put this woman on a stage, give her a mic, my God.
Oh,
And
thanks.
like, I can't believe that. I am truly blown away by that. And I'm also honored. I think that that stage gave a lot of women a jumping off point, and that was the entire intention. So, like, mission accomplished.
Yes, and so many women I've connected with from that. So, for my listeners who don't know what Fill Up Your Cup is, who don't know
Yeah.
Grace Blacksea,
Yeah.
tell us about you, who you are, what you do, all of the things.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So Fill Up Your Cup is actually so this was something that did help put us on the map for sure. It's something that we don't do anymore, just like because, life has changed after 2020. However, it is a event platform that we kicked off in 2020. We started it as, okay, like the lights went off March 2020, if you will, proverbially across the world. And we were like, how do we turn on light for people, especially
Mm.
for entrepreneurs in their own world, or those who are getting laid off, just women in general? How do we fill up their cup? And that has always been one of our mainstays, our top intentions, our values. And so we quite literally, if you will, like turn the lights on, and we made it really consistent. So it was like every Friday, 9 a.m.
Mhm.
Pacific, just so people could really have something to look forward to. And I will tell you, like, this was initially like for me, for my heart, in the sense of like, I needed something like that.
Yeah.
So within our business, Quench Collective, we started this speaker series. And so it was every week a new speaker, a new point of view. And it was all about the head work and the heart work of entrepreneurship, because you
Mhm.
cannot have one without the other. Like, it is such bullshit to say that it's all business all the time, because it's not. And so it was such a beautiful thing because we had everything for, like, we had you just, again, eloquently crafting this entire
Thanks.
story on systems and why it was so important. And like, you just took us through this such beautiful journey, all the way to talking about we talked about sex, we talked about
Mhm.
hormones, we talked about, like, you name it, we talked about it. And so we did that for a solid 2 years. It was such an incredible way of building our community within the Quench Collective. And so we no longer do that, just because I don't think
Mhm.
anyone has the bandwidth to show up like every Friday, because we had
Yeah.
so many people that showed up every single Friday. It was just this free meetup that we did. But it helped put us on the map in the sense of being able to support women no matter what they were going through, again, in the head work or the heart work of who they are. And so, I mean, that's really who I am as well. That is absolutely my intention, to leave the room better than I found it. As the founder of Quench Collective, that is my role. And then, I am also a mother. I am also a partner. I'm also a friend. I'm also a sister. So I think that we have these dimensions of who we are. We are not only our businesses, we are not just
Yeah.
business owners. So yeah, I'm a lot of things in one. But that was a really amazing part of life, and I like never forget that in my business journey, because I think
Mhm.
it was important, not just to me, but to so many other people.
Oh, yeah, you gave a lot of, like you said, new business owners too, a platform to meet others, to exercise their skills, to just network. And especially, like you said, at that
Yeah.
time when it was, COVID, and everyone was starting online businesses and no one knew what the heck to do. It was just kind of like everyone's just faking it till we make it. But I love that you embody just this feminine, like almost like sisterly, motherly, like we're all in it together. Like, you want to support women. And like, I've been obviously ever since then connected with you, but I just love your newsletter and your content and all of this. And I'm curious, like, has that always been something that was important to you, like growing up, like sticking up for the girls and empowerment? Or how did that like come into play with who you are now in your business? You know what I mean?
Oh my, that is such a wonderful question. I'm trying to think of like the genesis of it all. Like, how
Yeah.
did that ever begin? But I guess whenever I've gone back and back, and like even through like inner child work and just like so
Hmm.
much stuff like that, I do always try to figure out where that seed came from. I mean, I don't really know. I come from this huge family. My mom is one of 12.
Oh,
And
wow.
from there, I have like, a ton of family members, but more than that, I came from my dad passed when I was really young, when I was 7 years
Mhm.
old, and so I was raised by a single mom, and there was a lot that I had a younger brother who was 4 years younger than
Mhm.
me, and I really helped raise him, and so that kind of motherly part of me
Mm.
definitely was born very early on in my life. Interestingly enough, I can be very honest in saying that it wasn't from an early age that I was like, "Oh, I want to be a mom." Like, that was
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
not in me. That it was more that it was kind of presented upon me, if you will, in my life. And if anything, I spent a really good part of my life trying to take time back for myself. I mean,
Mm.
I am 35 and just had my first kid, and I don't think that we are ever too old to have children. I will say that right here and right now. But I think that there was definitely this time of self-discovery for me, for sure.
Mhm.
In addition to that, I never had sisters. I really didn't know what
Mm.
it was like to like I remember when I was young looking at girlfriends of mine who were sisters and just
Yes.
being like truly hand on chin in awe of how they in a matter of moments could get in a fight, could make up, and act like it never happened. I mean, it was just like,
Yep.
what in the world is going on? Like, this is cool. And also like, what's happening? Like, I just didn't have that experience. I was like, if we're mad at each other, we're mad at each other, right? I don't know.
Mhm.
Do we like does this
Yeah,
go on for
yeah.
days, months? I'm not really sure. Do we ever talk to each other again? So I don't know. But I will say that throughout my life, I have always been someone who has never understood the click or has never understood the like
Mm.
why we only ever have to conform to one being in one group or exclusion or whatever it may be. I mean, even in high school, I can remember just, in the lunchroom, like bopping around from
Yeah.
table to table. But what that meant for me was I got bullied a lot. It was like,
Mhm.
oh, she's that because it was different, right? It was a different
Yeah,
way of doing it. And I can see that so clearly now at the moment. Like my wounded bird self was very much that was hard. That was really, really, really hard. But I think that what I realized as I started to find my voice throughout my life is I started to dig in and do the work on my grief and trauma and things that have come up for me in my life was that I have been playing small my entire life. I have been doing everything I possibly can to speak softer,
mm,
to go completely invisible in the room, to not take up any extra space, to not eat any extra food, to not speak any louder than anybody else. And
mhm,
quite frankly, that's bullshit. Like again, there's these things that I realized that were beliefs of mine for so
mhm.
long that just were not right. And so no wonder that I felt so inauthentic to me for so long. I just like didn't know who I was. And I mean, in all honesty, it's an everyday journey. But
For sure.
I think in while I was trying to find a way to live a more authentic life, what happened during that time was that like we have to get on this soapbox and scream about what's really important and what's really
Mhm,
loud. And I don't want to do that alone. Like I am not standing on a soapbox singularly. I definitely feel as though I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with other women without a doubt.
mm. Yeah, and you definitely embody like, it's not I think there are people who try to create community and we want to and a lot of business owners want to and sometimes it's just not authentic and it just kind of falls flat
Mhm.
and it seems a little selfish and your community has never come off that way, which is something I love. But you brought up a couple of things through all of that and I definitely want to get to motherhood and how that's changed you because I can resonate with you so much. But what was
Yes, you know.
interesting to me is you mentioned you lost your dad at 7 and
Mhm.
I know that is a incredible grief at that age because I lost my brother at 8 and that's a
Yeah.
very similar age at that time, right? When we're developing.
Yeah.
And I literally when you said like I never wanted to speak up or do that, I really think that is like a symptom of the grief. Like you want to keep everyone P's and Q's. You don't want to stress anybody
Yes.
out. You've had to be the strong child. You've had to be the big sister. I didn't have any siblings, but I had to like be strong for my parents and family. Right. And
Right.
it wasn't until for me as well to my 20s where I was like, why am I trying to please everybody? Like, why am I
Right.
trying to make everyone else safe and comfortable and all of this? I should be looking at that for myself. Do you feel like you also kind of see that from your
Yeah.
childhood grief?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, with what you just said is made like, oh my gosh, like it's bringing that to light. First of all, I don't think I knew that about your brother. And I want to ask you a question if I can about that. Do you
Yeah.
feel like I lost my brother about 6 years ago. So it
Mhm.
really is just my mom and I now, right? Like this,
Yeah.
like, wow, like there's been this another wave of grief. And watching
Mhm.
a parent lose a child is a
Mm.
grief that I don't think, first of all, no one should ever know. Second of all, when you do go through it, I think that you're absolutely right. Like, do you feel like perhaps your grief was put on hold because of that?
Mhm.
Because you needed to like leave space for them to do so?
1000%. Because I know for me, because I was the only child, like it was me and my
Mm,
brother. My brother passed. So it was just me. So while, I was there, I do feel like it was almost like, they had this whole other thing, this huge thing happening in
yeah.
their life.
Yeah.
And my mom and I have talked about it where she was like, I was holding on because of you, but I was so
Right.
far down that I couldn't help you grieve until later. So for about a year, I was, going through different counselors and all of this. I never had like just a safe, not safe, but like a comfortable place to just grieve where others weren't also putting their grief around me as well. Does that make sense?
I mean, it makes sense 100%. And I hate that it makes sense for us, right? Because that means that
Right,
we've gone
right.
through it, but it also means that we have, I think, like this deeper level of um always having to it's a superpower of ours. Like
Hmm.
through grief, I feel like these things can like they become illuminated and kind of
Yeah.
amplified of it's I think to the point I'll speak for just myself here and like
Mhm.
maybe you can resonate or not, but it's illuminated and amplified my ability to tap into people's emotions
Yes.
around me. And yes, it's become a superpower both in my business and my life and my
Hmm.
friendships. And it is so hard sometimes to manage like
Hmm.
that. Like, I mean, even going to the grocery store, I was talking to my partner the other day about this. I was like, I have to wear headphones at the grocery store because I get
Hmm.
so intensely involved in people's emotions that like just about talking about what they're making for dinner that I mean, it's hard for me to turn it off sometimes. I'm just like have become a highly sensitive person over my life. And so there's that. But
Yes.
I think that back to the grief part of it, I think that you're absolutely right when it feels like when you can feel the weight of a loss in someone's life, it doesn't mean that our loss is any less significant
Hmm.
as losing our brothers, but there is something different about the
Yeah.
loss of a child. And so I think that in our kind of the way that our brains and our bodies are processing it, like putting it on a shelf, just meant that we had to
Hmm.
experience delayed grief in a different way. And I think
Yep.
you're absolutely right that what it does is it delays everything. And so it makes us be the last one to pick up for ourselves in the sense of
Yep.
like showing up for ourselves, or it makes us the last person in the room to take up space or to
Take care of ourselves,
take
maybe.
care, absolutely like take care of ourselves. I think that's actually it. I think you hit the nail on the
Hmm.
head. It's about taking care of ourselves because I mean, again, would love to hear from you. I have been horrible at taking care of myself my entire life. So, yeah, it's pretty wild how that can happen, but I'm always inspired by watching you and reading everything. Like I feel like you definitely have been on a journey back to that
Hmm.
without question. I'm sure as a
Yeah.
mother that's been a struggle too.
Well, that's where I was like kind of figuring this would go because it's like you and I have both experienced. And I know a lot of my listeners have experienced loss as well in different formats, whether it was children or partners or family members.
Yeah.
And I know for me, like, and I'm curious to hear since you have lost your dad and your brother before becoming a mom, for me, when I had my son, my anxiety about child loss was absolutely ridiculous. I was like, Mom, there's something wrong with me. She's like, it's no, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, you've lost a brother. So all of this anxiety, and he was a baby. So it was just amplified. So she was just like, all this anxiety, like it is just playing out in your mind of like what's going to happen. And I just
Yeah.
realized like when I became a mom, I had to almost like go through a lot of the grief again and kind of deal with it in this new identity. And did you have to kind of deal with that too once you had your son?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you're speaking to my soul right now. Like I'm almost getting emotional because
Yeah.
there is the answer is yes. In fact, I
Yeah.
remember really specifically sitting on, you know, gave birth to my son and you have this high, right? You're so sleep deprived. You're
Yeah.
in however many hours of labor or whatever the thing may be. And I remember sitting in the recovery room just on the side of the bed attempting to get up to go to the bathroom and I'm just like so overwhelmed with
Hmm.
sadness and grief that I just couldn't even stand up. I've never been so physically debilitated by an emotion. And I will also say that I had this before I had my son as well. In fact, it's what kept me from saying yes
Mm.
to having a child for so long because
Wow.
as an adult, I saw like there is some like a bit of a juxtaposition in our grief, right? Where this happened, you saw your brother pass when you were young. And so you saw that whole different experience of like
Hmm.
it's so interesting, right? And I saw it happen 6 years
As an
ago
adult.
as an adult where like it was very much on the table about having a child and oh my gosh and
Right.
it was the thing I remember looking at my husband and saying when my brother died that said watching my mom and like holding her and just watching that experience of loss happen within her
Hmm.
and just saying, "Never. I'm never
Hmm.
going to put myself through this," because I absolutely made her story my story without question. I
Oh,
mean, I
yeah.
believe that about
Hmm.
my husband too. It's like I have this belief that I'm gonna lose my husband because I watched it happen in front of me. And I think when for people when the unimaginable the most unimaginable thing happens,
Hmm.
it is our reality. And so
Yeah.
how can we think any different? It's like
Yeah.
we I- and so I think the work that I've had to do is spend so much time and every single day. I mean, I have a 7-month-old child. Like this is fresh. Like these
Yeah.
feelings are so fresh. Every single day I have to tell myself that I'm not going to lose my child.
Hmm.
Is it possible? Yes. Like I feel like I live on that tightrope of I have to tell myself that that's not my story
Yep.
and anything is possible. It is such a hard in between to live
Hmm.
in and I have had the most wild anxiety about it. I have absolutely struggled with postpartum anxiety, depression, OCD. It's been a wild ride these past 7 months and the most I would say the heaviest feeling has been the anxiousness and it's
Hmm.
been around that it's been around loss. Oh my gosh, this
Yeah.
is going to happen because I've had an example of it happening in my
Yeah.
life and it's really hard to turn that off.
It is. And like
Yeah.
you said, making it your reality of kind of and it's hard because if you lived through it, again, even if it was as a child or as an adult watching your parent, you can see their emotions. So it's almost like you take their feelings and like place it on yourself. And
Yes.
I remember taking him home from the hospital and we got the outlet. And I swear if that thing was not on, I was like, nobody move. Like I am like my eyes are on him. Like I was super anxious too. And I eventually got help. So I'd love to kind
Yeah.
of discuss that. Like, what are
Yeah.
some ways, and you're fresh in it. So I know
Mhm.
for you, if this might be something you're currently working through.
Mhm.
I've kind of gotten out of this now. I have different anxieties now that I have a almost 4 year old, it
Right,
never
right.
ends. But like, what are some things you've done to help manage this anxiety and to just
Yeah.
like enjoy these moments because they're so fleeting?
Oh, I mean, can we have a moment for that? It is just like they are so fleeting. And so yeah, the way that I'm managing it is about 4 weeks into my postpartum experience, I realized I had not stopped crying. I mean,
Hmm.
the tears had not stopped. And I think that honestly, like that grief, like that moment of sitting in the hospital really did activate it of just like, wow, like this I'm going to say this and I think that you'll understand it and I think your
Hmm.
listeners were too. Birth was um birth comes in so many different formats for people, right? It can be extremely traumatic. It can be not traumatic. It can come in the form of someone else giving birth to your baby and, hey, like
Mhm.
adoption, surrogacy, whatever. There's so many, our birth stories are so personal.
Yeah.
And for me, what birth felt like, although very low trauma, which I was, of course, very grateful for, it felt like when my son came earthside that I lost all of this armor with it. And I say like armor, and I don't even know if I mean it like that. What I mean is that this stuff that I had on me, like these external like layers, and I think probably what it really
Mhm.
was is more like scar tissue,
Mhm.
um, that were like, quote, I'm using air quotes here, like protecting me for so long, were were just blown to smithereens. Like I
Mhm.
felt like that child was born and I was completely reborn in the sense that I had nothing protecting me anymore. Like I had brand new skin. And as we know, like the when you've got brand new skin, the tiniest cut hurts even deeper. And it was just like, whoa, like this is, I am vulnerable in a
Mm.
way, like I am all about some vulnerability, like in life, in business, in everything. But like I was vulnerable in a way that I have never experienced before.
1000%.
And it just, that was something I was like, I don't know where to put anything. I don't know where to put these feelings. I don't know where to put this anxiety. I don't know where to put this grief and stress. And I think what it did is it blew off, if you will, so many layers of scar tissue. I was confronted with grief that I had never processed before. I didn't
Mm.
even know it was sitting there under the surface. I didn't know it was, I
Yeah.
had no idea. So 7 months later, I can look back and see that that was absolutely a gift that, like, how, I am absolutely grateful to be able to process trauma and grief that was sitting there because, I think that's important for sure. That is
Yeah.
definitely not stuff I wanna pass on to my son or my partner or anybody. Like, I do feel lucky to be able to process the stuff that's there, and I was having a really fucking hard time doing so at week 4.
Mhm.
Like, I sat there and I mean, that emotion, I I mean, it's wild, right? You're sitting there just going, wow, I have this thing in front of me. My heart literally feels like it is living outside of my body.
Yeah.
I am also like attempting to breastfeed. I'm attempting to sleep. It's not working. There's all these things. Like everything is so heightened. And I had a friend say to me really early on in my pregnancy experience, because I had experienced anxiety and depression before pregnancy. And I was telling her I had read this article that said you're something like 20 times more likely to experience
Yes.
it postpartum, and I'm now very nervous about that, right? Like very nervous, like, holy shit,
Mhm.
I'm gonna be thrown back into the throes of this stuff while I'm trying to like
Get to know
manage
your
this brand
baby.
new baby. This is not fair. This is not okay. No. And something that she said to me that I'm forever grateful for that her doctor told her, which I'm so grateful she did, because what she said to her was that you do not have to white knuckle through your postpartum experience. It is not
Mm.
required of you as a mother. 110%. It is not required. You do not get a gold star for it. You don't get a badge for it. It does not make you a better mother just because it's hard for you. Because it's going to be hard anyways. Like baseline, hard. And when she said that to me, I could just hear it playing over and over in my mind, knowing that I'm holding this thing that I love so much, and also knowing that I am experiencing something that really, really fucking hurts. Like, that is
Yeah.
not okay. The anxiety that's keeping me awake. I mean, it was so, my anxiety makes it so that I can't sleep, so that I can't eat. I mean, like, people around me, my caretakers were like, maybe we get some help. Maybe we get some help because like we want you
Right.
to be able to experience this. And so at week 4, I decided to take my white knuckle hands off the steering wheel and just say, listen, I need some help with this. And it took every last bit of strength that I had. Um, and I don't know why that's so hard for us as women. It's like, I mean,
Mhm.
we think that we've actually, as a culture and a society, have gotten better asking for support, but man, oh man, it's hard. Oh my gosh. And so I ended up going to my doctor I told him what was going on. I told him how I was feeling, and he absolutely affirmed how I was feeling, which was pretty amazing as a man too. But I ended up getting medication and I got
Mhm.
support. I also went to therapy in a more intensive way. I have been going about like once or twice a month,
Mhm.
but I stepped it up in that really kind of acute time to make sure that my support was a lot more potent and that I could really have everything that I needed going through it. I started to take shifts sleeping with my husband, like
Mm.
meaning like I was
Yay.
sleeping in another bedroom. Like there was all sorts of things that I did, right? Like food was still a little bit hard for me, but a certain food worked. And so, okay, great. Let's start with that and move on. I mean, when you're dealing with depression and anxiety, the smallest thing like getting out of bed, like putting food to your mouth, like taking a medication, like closing your eyes to go to sleep and not feeling like your heart's going to jump out of your chest. Those are all
Mhm.
really hard things that I do effortlessly today, 7 months later, but that were the hardest thing in the world to begin with. So, all that to say, I got support early on. And I mean, I think now what I can say is that I'm so glad that I did. I feel absolutely robbed of those first 4 months. It was or first 4 weeks,
Mm.
I'm sorry. The I feel like it's a haze that I can't
Mhm.
remember all of it, that I wasn't present, that I was just crying puddles of tears, like, into my babies, like, as he's
Mhm.
just sitting over me, and, I know that's okay, but I also feel frustrated, and I think that frustration will always live there, but I can also see the duality. I can see both sides of how it was necessary in order for me to get the help that I needed.
Yeah, man, there's so many points in there that I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Because one thing I feel just right off the bat that you mentioned just now about how you're like, I'm still frustrated at that moment, but it's like, what can we do about it other than take it and understand that it was just part of the refinement? Because I know for me, very similarly, I mean, I was experiencing anxiety before birth. And then, I also had a NICU situation. So I had it was a very easy birth, but a traumatic hospital experience, very
Yes,
traumatic. And
yes.
so then going home and then experiencing all the other things, for me, that haze was really for I would say like 4 months. And it hurts because I'm like, I almost feel guilty, right? Like the mom guilt of like,
Yeah.
I wasn't present. And then I was trying to build my business. So I was working like 2 weeks later, I was trying to work, I was trying to figure
Oh my
out, not
gosh.
to mention I was in a new relationship. So all these dynamics. And I've struggled with it a bit, now that my son's older, and I've had to be like, that's part of the story. That's like literally part of the refinement my son like has put me through. And it's just beautiful because it's like he doesn't even know. Like
He doesn't know.
he doesn't
No.
even know. And one day I'm gonna get to tell him, like,
Yeah.
you don't even know what you did for
Yeah.
me, you know?
Yes. 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 Oh my gosh. I mean, it's just, I think what you said is so profound. It's part of your story. It's the
Yeah.
things that make us who we are. Like without even knowing that experience
Hmm.
helps you make decisions, choices. Um, I mean, every single day, probably both in your business and your life and your partnership, like
Sure, yeah.
everything. It's who we are. It's like no doubt that those stories were meant for us. And that's sometimes like the shittiest and most annoying thing to
Hmm.
hear, especially when you're in it. I mean, of course, here we are sitting talking about it on the other side. And so I hope that it hits
Yeah.
people who are in it with that like grace of that. I know that you will get to the other side of it, but that's just it. It's what makes us who we are. And I mean, I think that your son is gonna be like, "Wow, my mom's a
Yours
badass."
too. I know. They're gonna be like, we have the coolest moms ever. And I think it's so important for moms who are in it right now, or even it doesn't have to be a newborn. You could go through
Oh,
this at a different stage of so any moms who's listening right now who's like, my kid's 10 and I'm experiencing these major changes, like advocate for yourself. Cause I think that how you mentioned it was really
yes.
hard. And I think those people listening who can identify with that people pleasing, take it all on my shoulders, I can do it all kind of mentality, it is really hard to ask for help. But I think what's also important is to also continue standing up for yourself, because I love that you had supportive medical care. I kind of experienced a little bit of different where I was kind of more just
Mm,
like, everyone deals with that. Like it's just baby blues. Not with my family. My mom knew, she was already prepared because she had experience loss. So she was like, trust me, I'm going to
right.
be ready. But my doctor, it was just kind of like, every woman deals with this. Here's some Lexapro, get on this. And it was just not very supportive. And I had to continue to be like, no, I need to get help. So disregard the doctor. Let's go therapy. Let's go this route.
Yes.
So I think for
Yes.
women who are listening, who are like, I've asked, like I've spoken up and no one hears me, like, keep speaking up. You have to speak louder. Like, you have
Yes.
to speak up for yourself,
Yes.
because unfortunately our society doesn't put a lot of emphasis on mental health for moms. And I don't know why, because it's like we are literally building our future generation, but okay.
Yeah, just like the reason the world continues to
Yeah.
move on and
Yeah.
just like procreation, it's no big deal. We have no
Yeah.
no pressure on our shoulders.
No pressure
I
whatsoever.
I hope that like everybody can truly hear you say that loud and clear, advocate, and I want to like amplify that message even more. It is it is beyond important, and I feel like it feels so uncomfortable to us as women
Mhm.
to advocate for ourselves because it makes us feel like we are a problem. It makes
Mhm.
us feel like we are speaking out of turn. It makes us feel like we are confrontational. And I want you to know that none of those things are true. It may be how it feels, but that's not the truth of it. All what it is advocacy. Um, and by advocating for yourself, therefore, you're advocating for your life experience, for your partner, for your child, for everybody.
Yeah.
And again, whether you are a mother or not, I feel like that always applies. But something that I think that is so important to remember. I was just telling someone this the other day that I was blown away by this. Right? Like, think about this. It's wild. We have so little support in pre baby conception and then postpartum. There's something wrong there,
Mhm.
right? Like, something doesn't make sense. Like, we can all sniff it out. We're like, this is fishy, but not like, and it's getting better. It's getting better for sure. It's just not like the ease of access is not there. It
Yeah.
is not accessible whatsoever. Like, not to
Mm-mm.
mention, like, our traditionally marginalized groups are not getting the access that they need whatsoever. And so
Right.
it's like we have to not only we have to fight for ourselves, and by doing that, we have to fight. It's fighting for everybody else. But I noticed something the other day that it's like when you're pregnant, you go through you're at the doctor, I mean, sometimes every week, depending on what kind of
Yeah.
pregnancy you're having, right? So for 40 something week or for 30 something weeks, you're going to the doctor every single week, and then boom, it's over. Like,
Yeah.
you immediately stop going. You immediately start going for your child. Also, like, what that's teaching us, I'm not really sure
Yeah.
is right. But we immediately start going for our children. And something that I noticed right off the bat is they give us, I don't know, Taylor, if this was happening, because like I think this is newer, but I want to hear if this was happening four
Mm.
years ago. They give us these mental health surveys that like you have to
Mhm.
answer from a scale of
Mhm.
whatever to okay, so this is happening. So from a scale of whatever to whatever, how are you feeling? And then the very last question is, have you had any suicidal thoughts? And it's so interesting. Like, every single time the nurse would hand over, I'm there for my 3 month or 6 month son's appointment, they hand over the survey and they say, oh, sorry, like, I have to ask you to take this. And I'm like, first of all, we cannot be apologizing while handing over stuff like this. This is
Yeah.
so important. Like, do not apologize. Also, give moms like a chance to answer this. Like, how am I supposed to answer this with like a baby in my hand and one like this? It just feels overwhelming. Like, give them an opportunity, whether have someone like have a nurse come in to like hold your child or
Mm.
rock them or whatever it may be. It's so weird to me. And then interestingly enough, I was there for my son's 6 month appointment last month, and the nurse hands it over to me. Oh my gosh, so sorry again. She apologizes, and I'm kind of looking at her like, you don't need to apologize for this. Then she says to me, but don't worry, it's the last one that you have to take. That
Like,
means
great. I'm glad if I'm in the hole right now, you guys don't give a fuck.
yep,
Like,
you don't give a fuck. You're telling me at 6 months postpartum, that's the last sliver of support I get. That's the last sliver of someone asking me from a medical standpoint, how are you? Like, I want women to know that like it we feel like because it's happening in front of us, it's normal. It's not. And
yeah.
so I think what that means is like, because I don't think we can ask them like, can I have that survey again? But like, I think what that does mean is that we can reach out to our groups of support, whether it's like
Mhm.
from a therapeutic perspective or even our friendship perspective, be like, yo, can you guys check in on me every couple of months and literally just say,
Yeah.
how are you? Can like you take a minute to think about yourself and just say, like, when I ask you how you are, to like answer me honestly.
Mhm.
Or even
Mhm.
asking yourself that, like, how am I right now? How am I doing on a scale of 1 to 10? I mean, it's so hard to see when you're in it. So I think it does take our support systems to be brave enough sometimes to say, hey, I'm noticing this or whatever it may be. But I mean, that is not okay. It's not okay how the system works. It's, I don't think it's the best they can do, and it's okay to advocate for yourself and ask for
Mhm.
better care and better support. So, I'll
Yeah.
leave that there, but
Yeah, and the last, like, rant, it's so crazy to me too because 'cause I'm like, we don't support mothers at all
no,
after birth, and
no.
then when a mother does something horrible to herself or her children, we're shocked. We're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"Oh my god, she's crazy. She was so"
Yeah.
like, are we blind? Like, do we not
Yes.
see there are so many
Yeah.
women struggling to keep it together and hold it all in and take care of their children and support their family or whatever, be a single mom? It's like, and then you
Yeah.
add all the rest of the layers of problems of the world on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
They say it takes a
obviously,
village.
yes, and
It's
that's why
like,
I'm
be the
like,
village.
having this platform is why I want to have women like you on to share your stories so someone else listening can be like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. Like, this is okay. I can ask for help, or like, I can find resources. Here's what worked for other people.
Yes. Yes. And I am so glad. I mean, I thank you because it's so important that we are having these conversations
Hmm.
because I think that's just it. It's like they say it takes a village, be the village. Like be
Hmm.
that for yourself and others, be an advocate. Here find yourself in these stories. It's okay to do that. It's
Yeah.
okay to identify and ask help. Like I know if someone slid into my inbox or my DMs, I know it's the same for you, Taylor, too. That was like, hey, I think I'm struggling with this. Oh my gosh. Like, the really cool thing that I think comes of motherhood is community. And
Hmm.
that's my favorite thing in the world. Like that I have found that certain relationships have dissipated, but also a lot of relationships have really,
Mm.
really turned up a notch in my life. And I'm really grateful for that. So it's pretty cool what can happen, I think, when you lean into it.
Yeah, it's so fun. What
Yeah.
is like, so now that you have experienced like just this beautiful transformation and still are, like I know I still
Yes.
am, it's never ends, but that first season of motherhood is just like, whoa, it's like a roller coaster. What has been like the most shocking thing, like exciting that you did not expect about being a boy mom?
Oh my gosh. I actually just wrote in my journal yesterday, which it's been so hard to get to my journal, but when I'm there, it's like so therapeutic. That I had like I knew I would love my child. Like there's no doubt. I used to say before I had kids, like I'm deeply in love with the children I don't already have. And I am blown away by how much I love being a mother. I actually looked at it very much as like I think saw like my mom still is the most incredible mother.
Hmm.
I mean like I the love whoa, like she shows her love so big like I had no indication otherwise of love of
Oh,
big
I love
love, that's
that.
for sure. And I feel grateful for that. I absolutely know that is not the case for everybody. And I think that I also saw how hard it was, and I
Hmm.
lived in that fear of like, "Oh my god, this is gonna be so fucking hard, and I'm gonna like I don't know that I'm gonna be able to do this." I also don't know that I'm willing to give up these parts of my life that
Mm.
like I have this business that's like running and going and moving and shaking, and I have, the way that I run my household and the way that I do this, and it's like record scratch,
It
you
all goes away.
it all goes away and everything's okay. Like it has
Mm.
been the biggest lesson. I mean, this boy's been teaching me lessons since before he even came our side. It was like it's the I don't have to be in control all the time
Mm.
to be a good human, to be a good partner, to be good to myself. I mean, he's also helped me take care of myself better than I've ever taken care of myself in my
Mhm.
entire life. He
Yeah.
has required me to slow down in a way that I never even know that I could. I mean,
Mhm.
I I've had some addictions in my life, and the biggest, most debilitating one has been busyness. And the fact that he has found this way to completely make everything around me melt away and
Mhm.
make what I'm doing, how I'm showing up enough. Like I am all of a sudden enough for myself. I am all of a sudden
Mm.
worthy of stopping and being present. Like I had
Mhm.
no idea that what I was even doing before. I mean, I know that parents often say, I can't even imagine my life before this child. And it's true. It's true what they say without a doubt. But I had no idea how much I would love this identity, which is very much still, I'm very much still finding my way, my footing in it every single day.
Yeah.
But I had no idea how much I would love wearing this identity as a mother, and how much I had no idea also that I could live without control, and that I could live without, like,
Girl.
I mean, I was like, it's possible. Like, here's living proof that it is
Oh.
possible. I mean, like, I'm still a control freak over here, or whatever it may be, but that's who I am. Again, it's one of my superpowers. It is not a bad thing. But the fact that I have this human in my life that has taught me to be present, like searching for these ways to be present, I've done it my whole life. It's like, let me try this thing, or this drink, or this journal prompt, or this whatever. Like, nothing
Mhm.
has made me more present than this child, and I am forever grateful.
Yeah, yeah. What I think is so interesting, and I'm curious to know if this was the same for you, is like before, I feel like most parents probably, most women, I think probably can kind of identify with this of like, you think you're going to be some kind of parent. Like you think you're going to be this one way. And usually it's however our parents weren't, or how they were, what we liked, right? We kind of envision
Yeah.
this perfect idea of the parent that we, wanted. And it just makes me, I crack up every day. I call my mom. My mom and I are best friends. I call her every day. I'm like, Mom, every day that goes by, I am more and more like you. It's terrifying. And we just crack up because I am like, growing up, I'm never going to be like my mom, which she was a great
Sure.
mom, but I was just like, I'm the total opposite. I'm type A. She was wild, go with the flow, like no organization. We're fun. We're loud. I'm the opposite. And then I had my son and I realized I'm actually not the opposite. I thought all those years I was, and I'm the exact same. And when my son was first born, I was trying really hard to fit into that like mom that I thought I was. And it was so funny because really more in like the last year and a half. And I think it is now that he's a little bit more independent and like has his personality, and we have this really
Yeah.
fun relationship, that I'm like, I don't have to be that mom. I can be whatever mom I am. So I'm like, if we're crazy and loud at the
Absolutely.
park and we're yelling, like people are staring, I don't care. I don't like, this is what it is. If you don't like it, you can walk on the other aisle.
100%. Like, I'm snapping over here. It's just, it's so true. I think that we unless we allow ourselves, we don't often get the opportunity
Mhm.
to take on these new identities, and to, I mean, I think it's important. I think that we should, but we just
Mhm.
don't usually, because it's like, okay, I found this thing that works and I'm trying so hard to
Mhm.
maintain, but it's like, okay, we've got this one life. We've got this one life. The beautiful part of it is that we can take on all these different, again, we are so multidimensional. So we lean into the wild and kind of carefree over here, and then we kind of lean into the more systematic, more like controlled side of us over here.
Yeah.
You can be all of those
Mhm.
things. Like, it's, and I think that motherhood shows us our range, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like, what a beautiful thing that is. And I love that. I think that's so amazing. I never thought, you know, oh yeah, I mean, the fact that I can just in the middle of the day pick up my son and just start dancing, or do whatever, it's like, or whatever the thing may be, again, like,
Yeah.
be the loud crew at the park. It's like, what's interesting is it probably looks like everyone's judging us, but what's sad is that there's mothers there who wanna be like
Wanna
that,
be
but they're absolutely just staying in their box. They're like,
Yeah.
"I wish so badly inside of the," but then instead they just look and they're judging, or they're like, "Oh, that's weird," or that, and you're like, "It is different," and that's the
Yep.
point. I am
Yeah.
trying to be different. I am pushing myself outside of my box, because I know what works inside my box, but I also know that there's more for me. I think that
Yeah.
that's, like, such an important piece of the puzzle, is that we all walk around so especially in motherhood, like, so afraid of
Mhm.
judgment. And it's like, little do we know, it's actually people are judging because it's different and because they're uncomfortable. It's a them thing. It is not a you thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was just talking about that on an episode I recorded this week that by the time this episode is out, will already be out. But I was literally just
Great.
talking about like changing your personality and how freaking fun it is. Cause right now I'm going through this whole refinement with myself. Like I've been through this refinement period like the past year or two with my business and my as a mom. And now I'm going through this just like, I think it's because I'm about to be 30 in like 2 years. And I'm like
Ooh,
just
yes.
feeling this like very in my skin. And it's just so funny because like you're saying, I just don't care what people think about how I'm managing my household. What works for us works for us.
Yes.
And I think it's
Yes.
just really encouraging to see other women doing what they do. And if that means changing your personality, if that means changing your identity, if that means being one way in your business and then at home you're the complete opposite, like do what works for you and really don't worry about what anyone thinks. It doesn't matter.
100%. I mean, that's become our tagline, our motto. It always has been for Quench, like, let's do business differently. And it's so clear. It's so funny too, because I remember even writing that out for the first time and like kind of like this internal
Yeah.
angst of like, "Ugh." But it's like, that's what we are, I think, constantly, like, even in the work that you do. Um, I think that we are constantly challenging people to think outside the box and
Hmm.
to like, how can we do this differently? How can we look at this from a different lens? How can we get creative? I mean, like doing things differently actually really requires a lot of creativity. And the
Hmm.
exact same thing goes for motherhood. The exact same thing goes for personal development. It's like the way that I've been doing things for so long, it's worked or it's worked up into a
Hmm.
point. But then how can I invite in this new lens, this new light, this new opportunity, this new person, this new system, this new whatever the thing is to look at things differently. Like it's healthy for us. It's a
Hmm.
good thing. And I think that that's also the thing that's always going to make sure that we are, again, advocating for ourselves, but also for people around us. So it's all
Yeah.
connected. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But it does require us to step outside of our box.
Yeah. So what's next for your box then? Or outside your box
Oh,
space? Like what are you seeing for the next, this year, the business,
yeah.
now that you're, getting your footing in motherhood? I'm sure you're
Oh,
starting to feel more
gosh.
of that independence because I know that was around the time like my son started sleeping more and I felt more like I could start doing things again. So like what's next for you?
My gosh, sleep. Sleep is the nectar of
Yes.
the gods. It is just
I
like,
know, right?
I know when you can finally get a little bit of sleep, it is wonderful. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. So I'm 35 and I'm so happy to hear that you are right where you're at, that you are taking the time of like, how can I kick the walls out of
Mhm.
these four walls that I've made for myself, and how can I look at it differently? How can I dive deeper into myself? And I remember also doing this before I turned 30, and I'm doing it again. Like there is
Yee.
absolutely no doubt. I am trying new things. Um I'm inviting in and also taking out things that don't work for me. Like, for
Mm,
example,
yep.
friendships that have gone stale that don't serve me anymore. I'm requiring so much more of the people who are in my life. Like, that's something that I started a long time ago, but it was like, oh, it's so clear now. That was step one. We are on like step five now of just like, it's got to be able to be enriching,
Mhm.
empowering, and like life enhancing to be in my world. It just has to be. And I think the really cool thing about what motherhood is that it makes your yeses so firm, no matter whether it's like, yo, want play
100%.
date, or hey, want to take on this new contract, or hey, want to take on this new opportunity. And it also makes your yeses and your nos both extremely firm. And that has
Mhm.
been such a gift. Like I am a Libra. I am just like a back and forth. Like I overthink everything. Like, oh, but what about this? And I can see the side of that. And I got to go down the rabbit hole of research. But it's required this much more, direct and firm
Yeah.
yes and no. And so in the journey to trusting myself, I'm also going deeper into asking myself what I want. So, like, what does my
Mm.
body need right now? And it's interesting. I'm realizing, like, I've always been this kind of cardio junkie, like, love a super powerful, like, spin class or hit this or whatever. And I'm like, oh no, like, right now, that like yoga class with a sound bath sounds exactly what my soul needs. Like, just doing just that, asking myself what I
Mhm.
need, and then allowing myself that, like giving
Yeah.
myself that. So I am kind of in this rebirth of what does my wellness mean to me? What does my well-being mean
Mm.
to me? Diving deeper into that. I just recently started like dabbling in art. Like that's been so
Oh,
fun to me and different and
what
like
kind?
totally um Taylor, texture art has like hit the
Okay.
scenes in a big way.
Like
Um,
multimedia stuff?
like multimedia stuff. My husband, it's so funny. He's the creative one in the family. He's a graphic
Okay.
designer. He works with his hands. He has a whole business around it. Like it is very, very cool. And he's always telling me, like, Grace, you need a hobby. You need a hobby. And so for my birthday this year, he actually bought me an online course, which I like appreciated so deeply, around how to learn how to do this, use this compound and use to create this texture art. And so we have the canvases and we have like the compound for it. And, I got all set up, like the brushes, the
I
paint, the
love
everything.
it.
And so it's perfect for me because it's not like I look at a canvas and I go blank. And so it gives me a starting point of like how I
Mhm.
can create this. I'll send you some pictures and
I
we
am
can
obsessed because I don't know if you know, but I went to art school. So I
I do know
did
this about you.
yeah, and I did
Yes.
multimedia in art school. So I did a lot of
Oh my
collage work
gosh.
with stuff like that. And it is so like anytime someone's like, I picked up a hobby with that, and I'm like, it is the best like zone out because you just like get in the mode and then you kind of almost do you see like your emotions reflected because you kind of like realize at the end you're like, oh wow, this is like dark and moody, or like, oh,
Yeah.
this is like happy and pretty, and you're like, oh, I'm
Yes.
subconsciously like,
Yes. You work out so much on a canvas.
yeah,
And when I say canvas, I don't even mean it has to be like a canvas. It can
like
be on an
paper,
art board
anything.
and paper, like whatever. You and my husband would get along famously. That is like his decompression. It's both
Mm-hmm.
digital and physical collages. And I think that that is such a fun thing. So yes, I'll send you all the things on
Send
texture art,
me.
and whoever is listening may want to look into it too, because it's fun. You get to work with your hands. Like it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I'm kind of just looking at how can this season for me is simplification and expansion all at the same time. How can I
Mm.
simplify my life, the things that I'm doing, like almost like the systematic things, the
Mm-hmm.
processes, so that I can expand in
I
other ways. I know
love
you know what
that.
I'm talking about because
I
this
know
is like
exactly what you're
the
talking
root of
about.
your work.
Well, this is just I feel like where I'm at right now. Like I just feel like at last year I really started to understand just who I am, and now this year I feel like I'm able to finally tap into those areas. Like it's almost like they were
Yeah.
there but I didn't know them. Now that I know they're there, I want to expand them. And I think a lot of that process for me is so similar to you, where it's like in order to expand, you have to prune. You have to like get rid of things. You have to make space for all of the new
Yes.
energy and the new opportunity and identity and personality traits or whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah.
So I'm like chills because I'm like, that's where I'm at. It's so fun.
Well, good. Well, we're going to share some notes here because this is going
I
to be
know.
fun.
We need to do like a year, like an anniversary episode and be like, where are we at
Yes.
now?
I'm
Yes.
scheduling it in it's on my Google
Yes.
Calendar at the moment.
March 2024.
I can't wait.
I know. Okay, so right now, Grace, are you still, with your community? Like, where can
Yeah.
people connect with you? Are you still, doing
Yeah.
things in your community? Kind of share just where people can follow up with you.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. So I am back from maternity leave. It's been
Yay.
such a wild ride. I took longer than expected because of
Good.
all of these mental health challenges, and I'm proud of myself for doing that. It was
Hmm.
really freaking hard, but I am absolutely back. In fact, the community has always been there and alive, and it's
Hmm.
been being served. So that's the really great thing. But yeah, connect with us. I always say the best place to start. I love a social airwave because it kind of
Hmm.
always for me gives me the idea of like who people are, what they do. So join us over there on Instagram. We are Quench.collective. And from there, you can choose your adventure. That's where all the links are.
Love that.
And we hang out in stories a lot too. So join me over there.
Yes, and I need to follow I think I do follow your
Oh,
page.
yeah.
Because
My
okay,
first
so
mom.
whenever
Yeah.
it's so funny because whenever I knew you were having a baby,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
And then when you had your son, I didn't follow your personal page. I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how I came across it, but I was like, Grace, where'd she go? Because you hadn't posted, and I was like, what is happening? But I didn't really know anyone who knew you that I knew that I could be like, is she good? And then I
Yeah.
somehow saw your Instagram and I was like, oh, thank you, God. It's beautiful. Everything, like, their son's beautiful. And I was just like so
Yes.
excited.
I actually should get used to saying that. So like business, community, all of the above, thinking differently outside of the box, doing business differently.
Yeah.
That's going to be all over at Quench Collective. My personal account is Grace Blacksea, just as it's spelled out probably here
Yes.
on the podcast episode.
Motherhood.
And I'm talking all things motherhood. I keep it real. I do not sugarcoat anything. I do also
Good.
don't have anything to hide. So DMs are always open on both channels. Just if anything resonated, but more so if you are feeling like you're in a spot and you're feeling like
Mm.
you need that spot to feel a little bit more easeful, I'm there for you for sure. But yeah, that's where I share. I've kind of in motherhood, I've also seen that there does need to be a delineation because it's okay if that you're going
Hmm.
through a season where hearing about motherhood is not serving you, whether that's because you're experiencing loss or grief or trauma or whatever around that. And so it's exciting now to be able to have, although they're totally blended,
Hmm.
but it's nice that you can kind of choose the avenue of where you want to hang out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. Grace, you're such a gift. Thank you for being here and for
Oh
sharing
my gosh.
so openly because I'm like, I feel like we need to have 8 more episodes going into all of these topics because I didn't
I
realize
know.
our lives were so similar
I did not
until
either.
this. So that's really interesting. We need
You're
to
here in
have
real
a
time.
wine time. Yes.
Yes. No, truly, I am so grateful for you and for this platform. I cannot tell you how important this is that you are doing this. And whatever, I know, I'm sure at some point there was that like, should I start a podcast? Should I do this? Should I do this?
Mhm.
Like the fact that you put all that aside and you did it, I'm so
Oh,
grateful
thanks.
because you've created some seriously brave space for
Thanks.
women. I mean, of all different walks of life
Mhm.
to feel seen and heard. And this is really special. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Grace.